It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you riding along with us, those of you who are joining with us live on our website. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. You know, we are looking this morning at some news that is out that is related to the budget. We're going to have 4 different topics this morning, the first of which is going to be the budget wars and how the loser in all of this is going to be the American taxpayer. That literally, folks, is the end of the end of the line. No matter how else things are cast, this is really the bottom line. The American taxpayer is going to lose in this, and I'm going to explain to you why. These people are putting together a $23 billion reduction in spending off the deficit over a 10-year period. That's $2.3 billion a year for a $4 trillion budget. That is the equivalent of you not buying a package of gum to try to save yourself from bankruptcy when you are overtaxed to the tune of 25% of your overall budget. It's absurd. And there's a war going on between the conservative people in the House, the conservatives in the Senate who are stating that they're going to fight it. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. Second topic is the House has passed there are 30 House members who are stating that they're going to bring Obama to court for not faithfully executing the laws. There are 30 members that currently support a House resolution calling for a civil action. I'm going to get into why it has to be this way instead of an impeachment action during that segment. I know most of us would like to see an impeachment. The problem, of course, is that that's not physically possible with the current makeup of this government. And so the best that they can accomplish is a resolution that forces this president to be taken to court for failure to follow the law, which is a constitutionally mandated responsibility on his part. Our third segment, the NSA Oversight Committee, is receiving millions, tens of millions of dollars from the same intelligence corporations that benefit from all of this surveillance and NSA spying. And so what you have is the joke of a group of representatives who say that they are in charge of oversight of these government surveillance programs, but they're receiving millions of dollars from the same intelligence companies that they would have to stop functioning if they were to find against their best interest. So I got to tell you, this is a conflict of interest that is so massive. If you were to try to pull this off in a court of law, you'd be tossed out on your ear. And then our fourth topic this morning, which is the most important, and I do not want you to miss this. I want you to share this with everyone that you can find. The latest National Defense Authorization Act has a brand new edition that explains all of the NSA spying. I got to tell you, folks, this is some dire stuff. We are talking about a brand new program that they're going to put in place that will enable the addition of, well, there's language in the new 2014 National Defense Authorization Act that becomes even more evil and traitorous than it ever was before. Section 1071A authorizes the Secretary of Defense to, quote, establish a center to be known as the Conflict Records Research Center, According to the text of the latest version of the NDAA, the task would be to compile, quote, a digital research database that includes translations to facilitate research and analysis of records that's captured from countries, organizations, and here's where it gets nasty, individuals now or once hostile to the United States. They define a captured record as any document, audio file, video file, or other material captured during combat operations from countries, organizations, or individuals now or once hostile to the United States. Herein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the true purpose of all the surveillance from the NSA. All they need to do is declare a person as now or once hostile to the United States, and all the data that they've been gathering can be used against you. You'll note that there is no exception or exemption for Americans. All right, let's get on to our first topic because just thinking about this NDAA thing's got my blood boiling. You know, they're talking about the fact that the budget here is such an unmitigated disaster. They want to avoid a government shutdown because they think it's against the best interest of the Republicans in 2014. And here's the problem, folks. They're willing to sacrifice you, the taxpayer. They're willing to sacrifice your livelihood, your ability to function, your ability to take care of your family, so that they can gain power again. And what they're proposing in this is a $64 billion relief from the sequester, which was the equivalent of taking a scoop of water out of the Atlantic Ocean with a teaspoon in the first place. The sequester was so ridiculous, it was only cutting 2.5% of the growth of government, not the actual budget, not the real money that we spend, just 2.5% of the increase that was slated to be in effect for these years that the sequester is in place. So the absurdity of this is that they're trying to say as if they're saving us money, and you keep hearing the word the deficit. They're reducing the deficit. Well, the truth is, first of all, recognize that the deficit is the difference between the amount of money we take in and the amount of money we spend. So that's the shortfall we have every year. That's the bankruptcy money, if you will, right? That's the amount of money that we don't actually have in income that we're spending anyway. And this Paul Ryan budget is such a joke because he's proposing a $23 billion reduction over a 10-year window. Now, let's just take a look at that for a moment. That is the equivalent of taking $2.3 billion a year out of the spending increases. Only the spending increases. Ladies and gentlemen, $2.3 billion a year is the rounding error on the Senate's lunch bill for catering. It's a joke. The truth of the matter is, the passage of this thing by the House, and they did pass it yesterday, was a flat-out betrayal of the alleged, quote, fiscal conservative position that those who call themselves Republicans espouse. We will have zero budgetary control between now and 2015. In other words, the budget is put on automatic pilot until 2015. But it doesn't stop the government from raising the debt limit. So while we may be on a budget that's on autopilot and that therefore it can't be touched or affected or modified in any way, this administration can move forward and borrow as much more money as it wants. We're already right now assuming that that not one penny is increased in terms of the current borrowing we're at. We are on track right now to have a $20 trillion national debt by the time Obama leaves office. That doesn't count in what we're going to spend on Obamacare and how much more we're going to have to borrow to fill that vast hole. This doesn't count in anything else that may occur. Any war that may occur, which they'll pass some kind of an emergency spending authorization bill or something else for. So in 2015, just when it's time to get control of the purse strings again, which is Congress's and the House's only real contribution, if you will, guess what? The problem is that in 2015, they're going to be at the Iowa caucuses trying to figure out who's going to run for president. And so that will overshadow any budget talks. The amount of manipulation and gamesmanship that will go down in 2015 will be unprecedented, because now you're going to have Hillary running against whoever the Republicans put up. So the truth of the matter is, we're out of the game for the next 3 years at minimum, and we will not have another crack at a budget for all intents and purposes until after Obama's out of office and whoever is coming in replaces him, Democrat or Republican. And have no fear, they have no intention of letting anybody else get into that game. It is a duopoly system where both parties represent, and the amount of difference between the two of them could be fit on the head of a pin. It could dance on the head of a pin. The truth of the matter is, this is an absolute and utter betrayal of every American taxpayer. The recipients of these monies that they are inflating our budget for, well, they don't have a problem with it because they get it. They're the ones who receive it. They're the ones who get the Obama phones and the free health care. They're the ones who get the free welfare and the free unemployment. Now, the one thing that the Democrats are mad about in this budget is that it does not continue the emergency unemployment fund, which has been in place since 2008, folks. 2009. Now, if it was an emergency unemployment bill, why are people still on it since 2009? It's not an emergency bill. It's just another welfare game. Unemployment welfare is what it is. And what the problem is that the Americans who have been on it that long have long ago changed their lifestyle to account for their new income level. And they've now become complacent with that. And so the truth is, it will never change. For them, they're happy in what they're doing. They figured out how to work off the books, or they figured out whatever, how to adjust their lifestyle. They've already lost their home or they lost their cars. I mean, we're talking about 5 years now, people. An emergency unemployment benefit program that's been on for 5 years. And it is what is forcing the unemployment rates in this nation to the point that they are. And when you hear these unemployment numbers of, well, unemployment is down to 7%, that's a good thing. That's not true. Because they don't count in there the people who have given up looking for work, which are the self-same people that are on this endless unemployment emergency spending bill. So the ending of that is the only thing that the Democrats are really mad about. The Republicans are counting that as a coup. But in order to accomplish that, they're raising taxes and they're raising spending. They're raising taxes and spending. And they're saying, well, it's not really a tax. These are fees on telephone bills, and these are fees. Stop. Anytime you are spending money and it's coming out of your pocket and it goes to government, it's a tax. Whether it's charged to you because your user fee to get on an airplane has been increased, or whether it's just $1 in your phone bill, it doesn't really matter. And the worst part of this bill is that right now we add spending, and the promise of the spending cuts, the $2.3 billion we're supposed to save per year, doesn't even kick in until after President Obama has left office. And here's the problem with that. Nothing from this Congress is sacred for the next Congress. So the truth of the matter is, we'll never see the spending cuts. Because the next Congress will simply evaporate it. It'll turn into smoke in the wind. Just like every other promise of every other cut we've ever seen, which is how we got into this problem in the first place. You see, it's always, give me the spending now and I'll give you the cuts tomorrow, when the economy improves. when this happens, when that happens. But when this doesn't happen, when that doesn't happen, and when the economy doesn't improve, then they come up with a convenient excuse why the cuts shouldn't be deployed. And what ends up happening is, as normal, America pays the price. They got the spending increases, but the back-end decreases never occur. This entire thing is a complete and utter joke. By the way, for the record, there were a group of Republicans in the House who refused to vote for this. Kudos to them, but they still lost. Now it's going to the Senate. And there are 0 senators who are supporting it. 0, not a single one. And I got to tell you, I'm in favor of them because this thing is a joke. They need at least 5 votes from Republican senators in order to pass this. They've got to, in order to get this thing through the Senate, the way it works is they put it up for discussion and then they vote for cloture. And cloture means that they've got to get 60 votes in order to move it forward. They don't have 60 Democrats. They've only got 55. So they need 5 turncoat Republicans to side with them, just for cloture. That means that they're then going to put it up for a vote. Then in the vote itself, they need, again, a majority of 60. So that means they need the same 5 Republicans to side with them on the passage of it in order to accomplish it. Jeff Sessions came out and he said he's going to filibuster this deal in the Senate. Rand Paul's come out against it. Virtually, Mike Lee has come out against it. Ted Cruz has come out against it. Even liberals like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska haven't committed to it. Now, they almost always betray us, those two. They call themselves Republicans, but they vote consistently like Democrats. And how Maine and Alaska allow that to continue is beyond my comprehension. Mitch McConnell said he's going to vote against it. You know why, by the way, Mitch McConnell's going to suddenly vote against it? Because he's up for re-election this year. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Marco Rubio, by the way, is another one. Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake is another one of these guys who is about as flaky as a French pie crust. This guy, I mean, all he does is look for whichever way the wind is blowing politically, and then he bows to that. The truth of the matter is, everybody in this game is not interested in the taxpayer. They're not interested in what's good for you. They're not interested in what's good for the nation as a whole. They're interested only at this point in how do they retain the authority and the power they have. How do they retain their seats of royalty? And how do they keep their party in the game? The royal party of the Republican and the Democrat. The truth is, this bill cannot do good for America. The automatic spending cuts that were kicked in by the sequester, which I'm almost willing to bet you money, you didn't even notice because they didn't really affect you. And the reason they didn't affect you is because all it did was decrease the amount of growth of government, which is already monstrously oversized in the first place. Their goal is to prevent another government shutdown. With all due respect, I am tired of the government sitting here telling us that a government shutdown is bad for us. Right now, the only way that we can put these people back into their place is to shut this government down. I mean, right now, folks, you got to recognize where we are. We are so far down the path of insolvency and so far down the path of insanity that, at this stage in the game, it's almost impossible to believe that these people are actually considering arguing about whether or not, I mean, it's like sitting in bankruptcy court and saying, I make $5,000 a year. I'm sorry, I make $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. My bills are $100,000 a year. And I promise you, Your Honor, if you want me to cut back on my spending, I promise I will not, I'll avoid buying Wrigley's gum. That's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. That's the equivalent. As his personal sacrifice, he's going to give up his Wrigley's gum. What are they, quarter a pack? The problem here is that they are leading us into insolvency immediately and forthwith. Our government is so far down the path of insolvency already, I'm not sure that we can salvage it right now if all spending were to stop and we were to drop this budget by 25%. That would be just to bring it in line with our actual income. I don't know that we have the wherewithal and the ability to accomplish that task. To sit here and believe that continuing to increase spending is actually going to benefit this in any way, shape, or form, or is going to improve our chances of not falling underneath the mantra of bankruptcy, or the umbrella of bankruptcy, is insane. And of course, when that day comes, these people are all just going to step up and say, well, listen, we did the best we could. It's not our fault. It's those Republicans. It's those Democrats. If they hadn't stopped us, if they hadn't blocked us, the Democrats will say this is happening because the Republicans stopped their spending us out of bankruptcy. And the Republicans will tell you that it's because the Democrats overspent. But the Democrats can't overspend without the House's assistance. And John Boehner directly is responsible for allowing our national debt to increase by $3 trillion during just his oversight as the chairman of the Speaker of the House. If you call that watching the purse strings, I don't know what kind of job description you were looking at. The simple reality is this. We are so far down the rabbit hole, and these people are all, and the media is out there playing these games with us, pretending as if this is a real discussion. It's not a discussion. The fix is in. The game is afoot. And there's no, Jeff Sessions is stating that there's a Senate GOP is going to filibuster Paul Ryan's budget deal. The only thing I can say is let's hope it's not theatrical politics, because that's all we ever see anymore is kabuki theater. They've already decided what they're going to do. They just got to put on a good show for you. They already know what the outcome of the play is. 62 Republicans voted against it, and 32 of the Demo Crips, the two gangs that run and operate our nation. The fix is clearly in at the House. They've already passed it. Everyone had better remember this in November of 2014. The only war here is the war on America. $23 billion in cuts over a 10-year period, breaking down that to $2.3 billion a year on a $4 trillion budget, and $65 billion eliminated from the sequester cuts that was just a decrease in the rate of spending of the last boondoggle we had, tells us that the only losers here are the taxpayers and the innocents who will be violated by this, the most corrupt and unconstitutional government to ever be in existence in United States history. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a fact. Everything else that you hear is merely propaganda and marketing. You're listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the House wants to bring Obama to court for not following the law. We can't even impeach the guy. We'll be right back. All right. We're back. Listen, I want to caution you, do not miss the fourth segment of today's show. When you find out what they have got planned for you with the National Defense Authorization Act, it's going to floor you. The new edition of what they're going to do to us in the National Defense Authorization Act and how it correlates into all of the NSA spying that's been going on, by not only the NSA but the FBI domestically, when you find out what they've got planned for you in the brand new National Defense Authorization Act, this is the same one that gave us the ability for the government to indefinitely detain American citizens without access to the courts, without habeas corpus rights, without legal counsel, and they can detain you indefinitely based on, quote, a belligerent act. Nothing defines belligerence. And you can never get to court to get a judge to say that is or is not belligerence. So if you get where I'm headed here, this is a gulag system in the making. And when you find out in segment 4 what the NDAA is now importing or adding in as an addition to the 2012 and 2013 National Defense Authorization Acts, you're going to be floored. All right. Let's talk about the issue of these congressmen who want to bring Obama to court for not faithfully executing the laws, which is his constitutional duty. And it's pretty much the only one that is outlined that he is mandated to accomplish. The Constitution says in Article 2, Section 3, he shall from time to time give to Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses, or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. Here it comes. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and he shall commission all the officers of the United States. That's the constitutional phrase that mandates that the president must ensure that every existing law that is in play must be faithfully executed. Now, that flies in the face directly of what he's done with the DREAM Act, what he's been doing with immigration, what he's been doing with the Obamacare debacle, where he's bypassed it 17 times, giving out waivers and benefits, extending the windows, without congressional oversight, without congressional review or approval. Nobody's looking at this. Now, here's the problem, folks. Only 30 members of the House resolution are calling for civil action. Only 30. For the record, let's remember that there are 435 of them that sit on this in the House. 435 members, and only 30 are stepping up to support this House resolution. Congressman Tim Rice, he's out of South Carolina. He's a Republican. He's sponsoring this resolution. And if it's adopted, what it would do is bring a civil action for declaratory or injunctive relief to challenge certain policies and actions taken by the executive branch. End quote. Now, what that means is that they want to take Obama to court and get the court to say, you have not followed the law. You have an obligation under the Constitution to do so, and you must, going forward, follow the law. It's an injunction or a declaratory or an injunctive relief challenge would essentially say that you have not done this and you must do this, and the court would order that be accomplished. In and of itself, that should tell you something. If the court has to order the president to follow the Constitution, we are already living in a period of lawlessness that is unprecedented in the United States of America. Wherein ever before have we had to have a court, which is theoretically lower than the executive, although supposed to be an oversight watchdog against executive overreach, have to step in and tell a president, you are breaking the law and you must follow the Constitution as required, without an actual removal or impeachment of that president. The problem is we can't impeach him. There's a couple of reasons why, but not the least of which is that because of the fact that the only way to impeach him is to have Eric Holder from the Department of Justice appoint a special prosecutor. Now, if you expect that Eric Holder is going to appoint anyone who is going to be objective in really investigating this president and has the power of subpoena where you can actually subpoena a president to testify under oath, you're dreaming. And it would require that the Senate concur. In other words, the way impeachment works is the House writes up articles of impeachment. It then has a vote on that. Does the House and a majority believe that the president should be impeached? Then the president goes to trial, and the trial is held at the Senate, and the person who sits over the trial as the judge is actually the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, which in this case would be John Roberts. And we've already seen some very dirty, shenanigans on John Roberts' part in reference to the Obamacare debacle. So here's the problem. We cannot impeach this guy because we can't get enough votes in the Senate to approve an impeachment. The only guy who could sit over it as a judge has already shown us that he's been co-opted and coerced and corrupted. I don't know how they got to him, but somehow or other they got to him. And at this stage in the game, the only thing that they can do is bring him to court and get the court to order him to start following the law, which would theoretically give them the right to go back and say all of this DREAM Act and illegal immigration and Obamacare nonsense that he's done, not to mention dozens of other unconstitutional actions he's taken to void out laws that exist, would all be, for all intents and purposes, overturned. He's telling the Border Patrol not to isolate and secure people coming across the border. He's telling them to release people. He's telling that the Immigration and ICE and Border Patrol that these people between certain ages can be left here, that they can't be kicked out of the country, and blah, 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 blah. He has repeatedly given unconstitutional waivers and changed the timelines on when Obamacare kicks in. These are just the latest issues that are happening every day. There has been a host of them over the past 5 years that, if dragged into this, would equate, I don't even know how many incidents there are. Where we are at this point is that we cannot get this guy impeached. And there's another question about impeachment out there, which is that, and this hinges on the issue of whether or not he's even legitimately the president. And I know that people will be out there saying, oh, my goodness, here he goes, he's a birther. Well, I can tell you that personally, I've seen his birth certificate, and I've seen the evidence that shows that it was manufactured. The one that you've seen was manufactured with Photoshop. The business that I own on a day in and day out basis is a web development business. That's what I do to feed my family. This is voluntary. This is my Paul Revere moment. And I work with Photoshop every day. And I'm telling you right now that they were so inept at the way that they accomplished it that they didn't, when you take Photoshop, you put layers of things on top of other layers. And then when you're all done with it, you flatten it and it looks like a solid document. Whoever did the work was so sloppy about it, so inept, so incompetent, that they never flattened the document, which would have barred you from ever seeing that these layers were applied. And the truth is, the layers can easily be peeled away, and you can see where they instituted and put a date in. You can see where they applied a signature that didn't exist before. For the record, by the way, the woman in Hawaii, who was the person who was responsible for releasing this, was the only one who died in a plane crash yesterday. Out of a bunch of people on the plane, she's the only one who died. Now, I don't know that there's a connection there. I'm just saying, everything at this point is so open to, I don't know, everything is so open to question, because at this stage in the game, there's nothing that we can apparently trust that's going on in our nation. So here's the question. Where are the other 405 members of Congress on this bill? Where are the other remaining Republicans? You see, what I'm trying to get you to understand here is not the fact that Obama's going to be taken to court. I hope they're successful with it. Because if nothing else, what it will do is slow down the rate at which the tyranny is occurring here. Only because, it's like giving him a flat tire on his bicycle. It doesn't bring the bicycle to a halt, but it sure slows it down a little bit. But the real question here is, should you look at Republicans, which you've traditionally supported all your life, in a brand new light? The light being that, in 2010, the nation, for all intents and purposes, peacefully stood up and revolted and inserted a whole bunch of Tea Party conservatives into the House. The goal was to put people in play who would say, we're not going to play by the normal party rules, quote unquote. We're going to vote outside of what the party tells us to do because the party's clearly not representing us anymore. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these people have been absorbed into the Republican Party. They've been annexed in. And either they have been co-opted, they've been coerced, they've been threatened, cajoled, or maybe they've been threatened with the idea that, some secret of theirs will be revealed. And many of them have actually capitulated now and have, joined the mainstream. They've left their roots. It got them in there, but now they've turned around and betrayed those roots and have failed to accomplish the task, which is to go in there, be swallowed by the dragon, and then pull out your double-edged sword and begin to slice away at the beast from the inside. That's the goal. That was the idea. That was the premise. Some of them have been digested by the beast. So the question for you is, to ask yourself is, one, should this be an abject lesson in betrayal for me? Because these Republicans have, for all intents and purposes, done nothing different than all the other Republican administrations behind them. The Republicans that are in office now, who have been in there for more than one term, have, for all intents and purposes, completely abdicated any level of responsibility to the American population. They truly have. And some of those that are in there since 2010 have accomplished the same thing, the same betrayal. There are a few stalwarts. We know of at least 30 right here. There are those members that are fighting for the right thing. I got to applaud, and y'all know I'm from Missouri. And if you're not from Missouri and you're listening to this program, just live with this for a minute. Jason Smith, who is the congressional representative for the 8th District, that's where I live, he was put into place as a backfill for Joanne Emerson, who had spent 17 years as betraying our state for all intents and purposes. She got elected in, and as part of that election, she knew that she was about to take a job for multi-millions of dollars for a lobbying group. But they didn't really want this incumbent, or they didn't want a challenger to beat her in the general election. So they made her run anyway because they were guaranteed that she would win because she's an incumbent and 86% of incumbents win. The minute, it wasn't 30 days after the election, folks, that she announced her retirement, her resignation. And so the state of Missouri was forced to find a new candidate that could backfill the post. Jason Smith was the one that the Republican Party chose. The Republican Party betrayed the constituents in the state, and instead of making it an open primary, they chose, the party chose who the candidate was going to be. That was a complete dereliction of duty on the Republican Party side. The guy that they chose was Jason Smith. Jason yesterday voted no on the budget. My applause for Mr. Smith for doing the right thing. Irrespective of how he got into that office, I have to tell you, there have been some things that he's been doing that I am absolutely grateful for. Now, it remains to be seen. Can he continue this momentum? Can he continue to stand up to the pressure and the power and the influence and the corruption? I don't know. But as of right now, I've been watching some of the things that he's doing very carefully. And I got to tell you, he's been doing the right things for the most part. He's made a couple of votes I wasn't real kicked about. But when it comes down, when push comes to shove, he's been doing the right thing. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why I don't endorse a candidate. Because when that candidate does the right thing, I want to applaud him. I want to give him kudos. I want to say publicly, this guy's done the right thing. This girl's done the right thing. When that candidate does the wrong thing, I don't want to hold their feet to the fire. I want to put their feet in the fire. I want to be just as bold, just as outspoken, and just as brash about their wrong or right decisions and votes as I am going to be about the opposite. And so I got to tell you, right now, it looks like Smith has actually done the right thing on a number of very important votes. For the record, he's blocked me from posting on his Facebook page, which I consider censorship. So, Mr. Smith, you and I know you and your staff watch this program, or at least capture sections of it. Reinstitute my ability to post on your Facebook page. That is a crime against the citizens of the state of Missouri to do that. That is the one thing which I will not allow you to get away with. You've blocked my ability to post on your Facebook page because I did post one thing on there that was the negative about you. That, sir, is censorship. Fix it. You've got an opportunity to do so right now, putting it out there in the public sphere. You've blocked my ability to communicate with you and allow the other citizens to hear my voice, which you may not like because it's critical of you sometimes. But it's also very positive. And today, truthfully, I would have gone onto your page today and I would have put kudos up on your page for you doing the right thing. But you've blocked me from saying the good things as well as the bad. And that's a mistake. Not to mention the fact that it brings into question my ability to trust you as a legislator. That's my personal message. You've done the right thing on this budget thing. And I got to tell you, I'm going to be calling your office today to see if you're one of these people who's going to support this resolution. I don't know the names of them all yet, but I will find out. Now, back to the rest of America. Here's my question to you. What are you going to do about the 405 legislators that are not signing on to this? You see, you need to be in touch with your representatives and saying, this bill is one I want you to follow. This bill is one I want you to support. This bill is one that I'm expecting you to stand up and vote positively on. This resolution alleges that Obama and his administration have abused executive power and have failed to execute the laws of the United States faithfully. Ladies and gentlemen, not even the Democrats can reasonably argue that that's not the case. They have to admit it because it's fact. So the resolution, because they can't call for criminal action, is calling for civil action. And they're asking for the district court in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, U.S. District Court, for a declaratory or injunctive relief. So here's a few of the bullets out of it. The policy of the Department of Health and Human Services with respect to health insurance coverage that is renewed for a policy year beginning January 1 and ending October 1. So basically, they're claiming that this is one of the items that the extensions, essentially, that he's been doing under Obamacare. 2, the one-year delay in the application of the reporting requirements of Section 6055 and 6056 of the Internal Revenue Code. 3, the policy of the Department of Homeland Security to exercise prosecutorial discretion with respect to individuals who come to the United States as children. That's the DREAM Act issue. 4, the authorization, approval, renewal, modification, or extension of any experimental, pilot, or demonstration project under 1115 of the Social Security Act that waives compliance with a requirement of Section 407 of such act. I mean, do you hear this stuff, by the way, folks? You hear the legalese gamesmanship in here? And they wonder why Americans just have zero faith in them. In plain English, here's what it is. He announced the administrative fix in regard to the canceled health care plans. He did that. He made that decision unilaterally without involving Congress. He approved a one-year delay in Obamacare's employer mandate without involving Congress. Last year, he granted the temporary status to illegal aliens who enter the United States without involving Congress, essentially. And the fourth one is he provided a waiver initiative for welfare work requirement under TANF without involving Congress. That happened a while ago. That was about a year and a half ago. Essentially, what he said is that the requirement that if you're on welfare, you've got to work was null and void. That you could be on welfare and not work. Now, the co-sponsors of this thing, and I've got a list of them up here, by the way. I've pulled them up. They are Bachmann, Bridenstine, Chaffetz, Duncan, DeSantis, Franks, Gowdy, Harris, Lamborn, LaMalfa, Marino, McClintock, Meadows, Nunelli, Pittenger, Posey, Price, Ribble, Salmon, Sanford, Schweikert, Stewart, Stockman, Wahlberg, Weber, Wenstrup, Williams, Joe Wilson, and Yoho from Florida. So the question I have is, where are the other 405 members? I grant you some of them are Democrats. They're not going to sign on to this because it would be a breach. Not only it would be a breach of their party affiliation. Is that the government we really want, ladies and gentlemen? One where the party is more important than following the law? One where the party overrides the law, whether Republican or Democrat? Is that fair? Is that right? Is that righteous? Is that following the law at all? Is that following their oath that they've sworn to uphold the Constitution? Not hardly. The truth is, we have completely seen Congress failing. And I got to tell you, we're down to the last 2 minutes of this program. So let me ask you this. If Congress has an 8% approval rating, 8%, folks, that's the friends and family plan. When you calculate 8% of the voting population, that is the people who actually are in Congress, are families of Congress, direct friends, or direct beneficiaries. Nobody else likes them. So if that's in fact the case, that only 8% of the country supports Congress, how is it that 86% of all incumbents constantly get reelected? How is it that your representative will most likely get reelected even when he or she has violated the oath of office that they have taken to preserve and defend and protect the Constitution of the United States and to preserve and protect the citizenry from government? That is government's only function. To accomplish a world where freedom and self-governance rule and government simply puts in line the boundaries of what that should be and acts on our behalf to ensure that. So when a robbery occurs, when a murder occurs, etc. But the rest of government's job is to actually protect us from government's overreach and outgrowth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where every Congress for the past 200 years has abjectly failed. And that's why when you hear things like from Thomas Jefferson where he says, let's forget men's ethics, but let's bind them down with the chains of a constitution, that's why he said that. Because men cannot be trusted to do the right thing. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our third subject. The NSA Oversight Committee is actually receiving bribes from the intelligence companies and corporations that they're supposed to be watchdogging. Holy smoke. You got to be kidding me. Talk about a conflict of interest. So the same companies that are supposed to be in Overwatch are actually donating to the re-election campaigns of the people that are watching over them. Somewhere I smell a rat. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. Today is the 13th. Today is Friday, the 13th. And we're in our third segment of 4. This particular segment is going to deal with the NSA Oversight Committee and how they are receiving millions of dollars to their re-election campaigns and campaign contributions from the top 20 largest intelligence companies in the United States, all of whom are supposed to be under their overwatch. Now, if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. That is the true. If you look up the term conflict of interest in the dictionary, there's a picture of this committee. By the way, do not miss our fourth segment here this morning. The fourth segment is going to deal with the NDAA and the brand new rendition of that, the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act, where they are extending the ability to incorporate all of the NSA spying and FBI spying that they've been doing with us into the indefinite detention provisions previously incorporated into the National Defense Authorization Act. Ladies and gentlemen, the NDAA is being used as the vehicle to employ and deploy fascism and totalitarian dictatorial rule here in the United States of America. Do not miss that fourth segment. All right. The article this morning is in Capital City Project. There's a brand new report that's been issued which shows that every member, every single one who is sitting on the committee for oversight is actually benefiting from donations for their re-election campaigns and campaign contributions. The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, these are the two committees that are in charge of oversight, have denied stricter reform attempts to the NSA programs and have instead, quote, propelled legislation aimed at restoring their trust. These committees are supposed to keep fraud, waste, and abuse in check. Well, you got to admit, everything that Snowden has revealed to us and everything that we found out subsequently since then from the 3 or 4 journalists, true investigative journalists in the country that are left, have shown us that this is an abuse of mammoth 1984 Armageddon biblical proportion. Here's the problem. Every single member on this committee is getting campaign contributions. MapLight, which is the nonpartisan research organization that has blown this story open, is exposing this thing, and they're highlighting donations that from political action committees, which are paid or funded by the same intelligence companies that are supposed to be under the oversight watchdog view of these people. The donations amount to $3.7 million in 2005 to 2013 alone. Now, Rupsberger, he's the Democrat from Maryland, and he's the highest-ranking Democrat. He sits on the committee. He's received the most amount of money. Listen to this. He got $363,600 donated to his campaign re-election committees, with 125 of that coming from Northrop Grumman. Now, I got to ask you, Northrop Grumman is part of the military-industrial complex. I mean, we're about their only client, the United States government and the military. They're the ones who make planes and ships and submarines and drones and blah, 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 blah. So how is it that it's appropriate that a member who sits on that committee, who is the head of the committee. He's the highest-ranking member of the Democratic Party that sits on that committee. And how is it appropriate that he is receiving $364,000, one-third of that from one donor alone, and this is not a conflict of interest? He's also, by the way, a member of that Gang of Eight group, which gets very highly detailed intelligence reports that most other members don't receive. The second person, the second highest amount, was given to Barbara Mikulski. She's also a Democrat, also from Maryland. Wow. So let's understand this and look at and notice their correlation of their physical location, where they live and the districts they represent, to the amount of money they're getting. Both Ruppersberger, and Mikulski both represent Maryland. They're both Democrats, and she got $210,000. He got $363,000. Now, guess where most of the military-industrial complex is based out of? You betcha. Right around the outskirts of Washington, D.C., in Maryland and Virginia. Now, Mikulski is even worse because she also happens to be the chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. And this is the group that actually allocates the federal funds that go out to a majority of these federal programs, including the NSA and the FBI, for the funding for all of this spying they're doing. You've got to be kidding me. This, folks, is the fox guarding the hen house in a way that is completely so obviously a conflict of interest and so obviously a betrayal of their role and their duty and their obligation to be fair and impartial, to be arbiters and watchdogs. I mean, how can you be a watchdog when you're taking bribes from the group you're supposed to watchdog? It's an insult. Frank Lobiondo, Republican from New Jersey, $205,000. He's the second highest ranking Republican on the House Armed Services Tactical Air and Land Forces Subcommittee. Well, look at the name of that group he represents, the subcommittee he represents. The House Armed Services Tactical Air and Land Forces. Guess who these donors are? And let me finish with. And by the way, Lobiondo is a Republican from New Jersey. James Langevin, Democrat from Rhode Island, $200,000. More than that, actually, $200,850. He got it from intelligence companies, their PACs, their political action campaigns, top executives, and lobbyists. He's the second highest ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Intelligence Subcommittee. Here's the companies that are among the top donors. L3 Communications, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, CACI International, GTCR Golder Rauner, SAIC Incorporated, Mission Essential, and Booz Allen Hamilton. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, this is a complete... Look, the simplest way I can put this is, if you said, I'm donating to a judge's reelection campaign, but I can have that judge hear my cases, you would say, no. And this is no different. How is it acceptable that Americans would not be up in arms? And the truth is, you probably didn't know about it. But it doesn't make it less criminal. This is a criminal act of bribery. I'll make your problems go away as long as you donate to my reelection campaign. Lockheed Martin donated $798,000 plus. L3 Communications, $238,000 plus. CACI International, $8,300. SAIC, $300,000 total. This is both House and Senate. Mission Essential, $500. Booz Allen Hamilton, $12,000. Griffin Corporation, $5,000. Battelle Memorial Institute, not even sure what that is, $4,550. But look at the big cats, the Lockheed Martins, the Northrop Grumman, $753,000. General Dynamics, $676,150. Johns Hopkins University, $80,000. What does Johns Hopkins get out of this? They do all the studies. They get research grants. Do you not smell it? I mean, this is corruption so bold, so in your face, that, and if you say, I don't get it and I don't see it, that's like telling me you're standing on top of a dead animal that's been there for a week and you don't smell the aura of death rising off of it. This is... I got to tell you, this is a perfect example of why America has descended into a fascist dictatorship that just hasn't been publicly announced yet by the media. This is a quote from the Center for Public Integrity. It's not clear from the report whether the contractor's overall contributions to committee members have been rising. During the 2005 and 2006 election campaign, when only 9 of the current members served on the committees, the contractors gave those members a total of $344,950. During the 2011-2012 campaign window, they gave a total of $1,046,000 to 36 of the 40 current members of the committee, including to the 9 members who joined the committee this year. The other 4 received industry contributions prior to 2011. The only guy, by the way, who is actually speaking out about what's going on in the NSA has been Ron Wyden. He's a Democrat from Oregon. You've heard him speak out before about the NSA spying and saying how dangerous this is, and that he's been muzzled and gagged to prohibit him from telling the American populace exactly what and how great and large and broad and dangerous this is. You've heard Rand Paul say that too, but he doesn't sit on these committees. Ron Wyden does. He's a Democrat. He also has received donations of $24,500, which is unconscionable. You see, this is exactly the problem. These people shouldn't be receiving donations from the self-same companies that benefit from their decisions. By the way, even though he got $24,500, he's at the bottom of the pack of those who actually received the money. In other words, he got the least. Now, for the record, just so you understand this, the U.S. intelligence budget for 2013 was $52.6 billion. So for these guys to donate a few million, for these companies to donate a few $1 million to the people who sit on these committees, that's the best investment you could make. It makes gold, it makes Wall Street look like a waste of time. You donate to a campaign a few $1 million, and the contract you get back is worth hundreds of millions, billions perhaps. How good an investment was that? And is it a wise expenditure of our money? No. How many times have we seen these contract overruns where they get a contract and it's for, $1 billion to build something or other? Halfway through, they come out and they say, well, we can't really do it for $1 billion. It's going to cost $1.5 billion. We have to, we've overridden our estimated budget. We need another $500 million to finish the job. And Congress says, oh, okay, no sweat. Here you go. Then they come back just before they finish the project and they say, we're really short again. We need another $500 million to finish the job. The original estimate of $1 billion turns into $2 billion. Happens every day, folks. Not to mention the fact that the amount of fraud and abuse that's wrapped up in those numbers is staggering. These companies consistently and routinely underestimate the actual bid, and they know doggone well up front they're doing that. If you were a guy who runs a business where you go out and bid on projects, do you think you'd be able to get away with that? If you went up to a business and you said, hey, we're a commercial roofing company, and we're going to put a brand new roof on your building because the other one is shot, and the cost of that is going to be $50,000. And the guy says, okay, well, I've gone out there and I've bid this thing out. I looked at 3 different or 5 different roofing contractors. I've chosen you because, 1, your work ethic is good. I've looked at some of the work that you've done. I've spoken to some of your prior customers, and I'm trusting that you guys have the skill set and the knowledge and the experience to do the job right. And your price is appropriate. It may not be the highest. It may not be the lowest. It may be somewhere in the middle. Maybe it is the lowest. I don't know. But the truth is, that business chooses that roofing contractor for a $50,000 roofing replacement. They get up there, they start tearing off the roof. They wait until the roof is torn off, and then they come back and they say, we underestimated the job. We need another $35,000 to finish the job properly. And the owner of that business would say, whoa, why didn't you understand, if you're so experienced in roof contracting, why you were going to have all these expenses that were unanticipated? You've done this 100 times before. I mean, you should have known that you were going to need this or that or the next thing. But now he's over a barrel. Why? Well, because he's already given him half the money, and his building is exposed. He's got no roof. So he acquiesces and he hands over the extra $35,000. They go ahead and start the work again, and they get just short of completing the job. And they come back and they say, we ran into another thing. We're out of tar and we're out of rubber. And so, we underestimated the amount we'd need, and we need another $20,000 to wrap the job up. You know what would happen in a case like that? The building owner may well likely pay the extra money because he's got to protect his business and function, and he can't have a roof that leaks. But right after that roof is finished, he's likely to go to court and say, these guys violated the terms and the agreements of our committed contract. America never does that. We allow these companies to milk us for trillions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, and I do mean trillions with a T. They've been doing this. How many times have you heard about the $800 hammer or the $600 toilet seat? These agencies and these administrative committees that oversee these contractors are the ones who actually advance the legislation. They're the ones who are supposed to be looking to make sure that there is no fraud, waste, and abuse in the system. And yet, they're responsible to make sure that these companies are not defrauding us. But they're taking money behind everybody's back. A $52.6 billion budget for intelligence. And by the way, that's all black operations. Nobody really knows what that money's for because it's all secret. That's a lot of money. This is the top secret spending. Data collection, data analysis, management, facilities and support, the data processing portion. This is all the NSA and the FBI stuff, folks. Now, 70% of that budget, $53 billion, is used to pay private contractors. Guess who they are? L3, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Honeywell. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. This is the same thing that Eisenhower was warning us about with the military-industrial complex, and it's now so true, so in your face, so bold, so blatant. I got to tell you, this is why our country is gone down the tubes. Because the people who you've elected to sit there and represent you have completely and utterly betrayed us. And these contractors are more than willing. Listen, their profit is their margin. That's their bottom line. That's their only motive. They don't really care about freedom and liberty because, truth be known, they have a vested interest in the United States becoming a totalitarian dictatorship. You know why? Because when that happens, the country will militarize. And who's going to benefit from that? They are. It's not going to be Walmart. It's not going to be, it's not going to be the company that makes iPhones. The companies that are going to benefit from us becoming a military dictatorship are going to be these self-same companies. So guess what? If you're buying the committee that's overseeing you, you're ensuring that you will benefit in the long term. And our Congress representatives and our House members and our Senate members are selling us down the road for some short-term profit just for an election. They're taking a bribe of $30,000 to make sure. I mean, look, they're taking a bribe of $30,000 to give away a contract worth $3 billion. That's the cheapest bribe. I mean, even the mob has more courtesy than that. This is why I say to you that we cannot resolve this issue with political change. We're never going to be... The only way that we could ever accomplish this is if we were to sit there and say, we're going to take every member of the government who is currently operating in there, and we're going to remove them. Everyone has to go. It would require the total replacement of every member of Congress, every member of the courts, and the White House, and the elimination of virtually every administrative agency, except Commerce and Border Patrol. Those are the only two constitutionally authorized. That's what it would require in order for our nation not to descend into totalitarianism. Face it, folks, either we can do this now while we can do so peacefully, or we're going to wait until the steely fist of dictatorships and totalitarianism sees us and government-sponsored domestic terrorism closes in on us, and we're going to have to fight with our very lives. I got to tell you, Churchill said it best. If you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. In fact, there may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory because it is better to perish than to live as a slave. You're listening to America's Voice. We'll be right back. All right. We're in our final segment, and we're back. You're listening to America's Voice now. I'd like for you to have a piece of paper and a pen handy when you listen to our programs because we give out information. And I want to hear from you. I'd like you to take notes about something that you agree or disagree with, and then give me the feedback on it by sending me an email. You can email me at Mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's Mike at americasvoicenow.org. And tell me, I agree, I disagree. Here's where I found a fault with your argument. Here's something I agreed with. Here's something I disagreed with. And here's why. The one thing I don't want you to do is to send me a YouTube video link that says, here, watch this. Because truthfully, folks, I probably get 20 of those a day. I don't watch them because I can't. If I spent all day doing that, I would accomplish nothing else. If you want to tell me something, you've got to send it to me with your argument, your reasoning, your belief system, your rationale, your well-thought-out reasoning and argument. I want to hear the critical thinking that you have expelled and you have exposed so that you can really tell me what you've determined. Don't tell me what somebody else has told you to think. Tell me what you think and tell me why you think that. I'll respond to you. I always do to those. But when you send me a link that says, here, watch this video, forget it. I'm not going there. I just don't have the time. The physical time. I've got to make a living too. And it's not doing this. I can assure you of that. Not to mention the fact that that doesn't tell me that you've learned anything or that you're teaching me something. And I'm certainly willing to learn. But I'm only going to learn when I have a real clear, lucid, well-reasoned argument to represent that position. All right. This last topic is one that you need to be aware of. I actually took the time to print the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act is out there. And Congress is trying to rush this through, like they always do. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a very, very, very dangerous addition. They've added a brand new section, a brand new area. Now, for the record, if you're new to the NDAA or you're new to America's Voice or you're new to this whole world and you're coming awake from your slumber, the original 2012 National Defense Authorization Act had a section that allows the federal government to detain Americans and foreigners, of course, but I'm predominantly concerned about Americans, to detain American citizens indefinitely without access to the court, without access to an attorney and legal counsel, and without even notification that you've been detained by them. In other words, they can snatch you off the street and hold you in detention, and your family wouldn't even know what happened to you. And you don't have access to a lawyer to go to court and say, hey, wait a second, stop, you guys have it all wrong, I didn't do this. And their definition of what you can be held for is for the commitment of a belligerent act. And the belligerent act is not identified. They were given repeated opportunities to repeal this and didn't. In 2013, they added more onerous angles to it. And here's the final rub. And ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be your proof that explains what all the NSA spying, what all the surveillance, what all the FBI spying is on your phones, your emails, your records, your contacts, your internet surfing, all of this monitoring that's going on, public, private, and otherwise. Here we go. They've created a new section called 1071. And it's under subtitle G. This is an 1,100-page document, folks. Miscellaneous authorities and limitations. Miscellaneous authorities and limitations. So what they're doing is they're burying this somewhere in the back, hoping nobody finds it. And here's what it says. This is an enhancement of the capacity of the United States government to analyze, and I want you to be very, very cognizant now of the language that they're using, because this is legalese personified, to analyze captured records. Notice the word captured and records. Now, for the record, I want you to know, going into this, that the United States of America, in the 2012 and 2013 NDAAs, was declared to be part of the War on Terror battlefield. The battleground is now the United States. We're incorporated into the global war on terror, and the United States is considered, in writing, to be part of the battlefield. And so when you're going to understand what that means as you hear some of what's going to happen today. They're creating a new thing called the Conflict Record Research Center. And this is by the Department of Defense. The Secretary of Defense may establish a center to be known as the Conflict Record Research Center. The purpose of this is the following. 1, to establish a digital research database, including translations. That could be verbal translations of a foreign language, but it can also be a translation of your phone calls and your emails from a speech to text. Remember now, you're dealing with lawyers, and they're leaving this language very ambiguous and very, very vague so that they can really hammer you down later. Listen to this. To establish a digital research database, including translations, and to facilitate research and analysis of records captured from countries, organizations, here it comes, and individuals. And here's the phrase they're going to start using now. This is the new catchphrase. Now or once hostile to the United States. With rigid adherence to academic freedom and integrity. And they don't define any of this, by the way. Now, I'm going to tell you, they do define at the back of this what a record constitutes. And let's go to that and then I'll come back to this. This thing is 5 pages, and I've only highlighted those areas that are pertinent. The definition. This is page 489, line 21. The term captured record means a document, audio file, video file, or other material captured during combat operations. And remember, we are now in the battlefield on the war on terror, right? So the U.S. is the part of the combat zone. So during combat operations, which would mean anything that they captured, let's say, as a result of what happened in Boston with the Boston bombing. Let's use that as the example, right? The term captured record means a document, an audio file, a video file, or other material. What is that other material? Metadata from your cell phone. Perfect example. Your internet searching. And a record of where you've traveled around the internet, and all the stories you've read, all the articles you've read, all the places you've visited. Or other material, that's what falls up underneath other material, captured during combat operations from countries, organizations, here it comes again, or individuals, now or once hostile to the United States. Now or once hostile to the United States is the extension of the belligerent act. Okay? So in other words, by your committing a belligerent act, you are now or were once hostile to the United States. This gets even uglier. Consistent with the protection of national security information. This is the second bullet. I hope I've got enough time to wrap this thing today. Consistent with the protection of national security information, personally identifiable information, that means they know who you are, and intelligence sources and methods, spying, the internet searching, the capturing of your phone calls, the metadata records, all of that, right? To make a significant portion of these records available to researchers as quickly and responsibly as possible, while taking into account the integrity of the academic process and risks to innocent or third parties. So first of all, they now introduce the concept of researchers. They're going to hand this information, your personal information, and it's personally identifiable, to researchers. Who might those researchers be? It gets even worse. Item 3, to conduct and disseminate, that means disperse around, research and analysis to increase the understanding of factors related to international relations, counter-terrorism, and conventional and unconventional warfare, and ultimately enhance national security. That is not a mouthful, ladies and gentlemen. That is volumes. To conduct and disseminate research and analysis to increase the understanding of factors that are related to international relations, counterterrorism, conventional and unconventional warfare, and ultimately enhance national security. So they're going to build these massive dossiers and databases on every American. Then they're going to cherry pick who might or might not have been classified as an individual that would be, where's the phrase they use? Shucks. The phrase they use is now or in the past hostile, right? So, okay, hang on a second, because this gets even uglier. Item 4. And here's where you're going to start seeing how the progressive left has captured this process to build an enemies list. 4, to collaborate with members of academic, and broad national security communities. Broad national security community. That can mean anything and anybody. That's the NRO, the NSA, the FBI, the DHS. The list goes on and on and on. To collaborate with members of academic and broad national security communities, both domestic and international, on research, so your information can be shared with a foreign government, including the GCHQ, the NSA for England, as an example. On research, conferences, seminars, and other information exchanges. I mean, folks, that's a loophole big enough to drive a tractor trailer through. To identify topics of importance for the leadership of the United States government and the scholarly community. Here's where you're going to understand what all of that means. This is so evil. It is beyond comprehension. So now, they can collaborate with members of academic and broad national security committees, both domestic and international. They can do research, conferences, seminars, and information exchange to identify topics of importance for the leadership of the U.S. government and the scholarly community, right? Concurrence of the Director of National Intelligence. This is the guy who runs the NSA. The Secretary of Defense shall seek the concurrence of the Director of National Intelligence to the extent the efforts and activities of the center involve the entities referred to in Section B4. Now, Section B4 is who are these members that they can collaborate with academically and domestic and international on research conferences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Item 4, it's not 4. Item 2D. Here's where they embroil the rest of the government into this. Support from other United States government departments and agencies. The head of any non-Department of Defense department or agency of the United States government may. So let's understand who that is. The head of any non-Department of Defense department or agency of the United States government may. So that incorporates everything from the EPA folks to the FCC to the FAA to the Banana Boat Republic. Okay. They're incorporating everything in here so that they can widely share and disseminate all of your information and anybody who is considered to be either now or prior hostile to the United States of America. Based on what? Your belligerent act. Support from other United States government departments. The head of any non-Department of Defense department or agency of the United States government may, 1, provide to the Secretary of Defense services, including personnel support, to support the operations of the center, so they can kick employees over to them and say, here, this employee is on loan to you. And 2, transfer funds to the Secretary of Defense to support the operations of the center. So their budgets can be subverted, even though it's the USDA. They can take some of their budget and funnel it into this. It's a black ops money wash is what it is. Here's where it gets really ugly. Acceptance of gifts and donations. Excuse me? Gifts and donations? When do we run black ops and intelligence operations on gifts and donations? Oh, you're going to find out in a second. 1. Subject to paragraph 3, the Secretary of Defense may accept from any source specified in paragraph 2 any gift or donation for purposes of defraying the costs or enhancing the operations of the center. The sources specified in this paragraph are as follows. This is item 2. These are the qualified sources that may donate money to help defray the costs or enhance the operations. The government of a state or a political subdivision of a state. So your state can submit what? Your tax records, your real ID records, all of the stuff that ordinarily the federal government wouldn't have access to because it's a state-owned intelligence document, not to mention money. B, the government of a foreign country. So that means that the GCHQ can spy on Americans, and the NSA can say, we didn't spy on Americans. And then the GCHQ can take that information and give it over as a gift to the American government, who can then use it as they will. C, wait until you hear this one. This one's the rub. A foundation or other charitable organization, including a foundation or charitable organization that is organized or operates under the laws of a foreign country. You know who that is? The first thing that jumped into my mind, political action committees. Leftist money from groups like Sierra Club, Soros. So George Soros could be funding our national security NDAA record system. D, any source in the private sector of the United States or a foreign country. Any source. Not a foundation or other charitable organization, just period, any source. That includes everything. There's nothing that's not covered under any source in the private sector of the United States or a foreign country. A private source could be Sheikh Abdullah. Okay, here's their caveat now. The Secretary may not accept a gift or donation under this subsection if the acceptance of the gift or donation would compromise or appear to compromise, quote, 1, the ability of the Department of Defense, any employee of the department, or any member of the armed forces from carrying out the responsibility or duty of the department in a fair and objective manner. That's up to their discretion, of course, so. B, the integrity of any program of the department or of any person involved in such a program. So if it compromises the integrity of any program of the department or of any person involved in such a program, they have the right to say we don't want the money. But it doesn't say they can. It just says the Secretary may not accept a gift. It doesn't say shall not. It says may not, which means it's entirely up to the Secretary's discretion. Item 4. The Secretary shall provide written guidance setting forth the criteria to be used in determining the applicability of paragraph 3 of any proposed gift or donation. The Secretary shall provide written guidance putting forth the criteria for any gift or donation. Okay. Here's the rub, and here's where you got to get a hold of this thing. By the way, the term gift or donation can mean this. The term gift or donation means any gift or donation of funds, materials, including research materials, that's the data, real or personal property, that's the data that they've gotten through violating your Fourth Amendment, or it's the sneak and peek stuff they stole out of your house or your business, or services, including lecture services and faculty services. That's what constitutes a gift. So here's the deal. What you're going to have is these leftist progressive groups, including groups that come out of the United Nations and they lobby us for Agenda 21 and so forth and so on. They're going to be able to donate to this and share in the information. The term captured record, I want you to understand this again. The term captured record means a document. That's physical property, right? That was covered under the last definition I just told you about, which was the gift or the donation of materials and real or personal property. The term captured record, so they capture the record in a foreign country and they can turn it over to the United States as a piece of real property or personal property or material. The captured record means a document, an audio file, a video file, or other material. Another material could be anything, folks. Captured during combat operations from countries, organizations, or individuals now or once hostile to the United States. Since the war on terror in 2012's NDAA incorporated the entire physical geographic United States of America into the new combat zone, what does that tell you? Because now all they have to do is claim that these records were captured during a combat operation from a country, an organization, or an individual that was now or once hostile to the United States anywhere in the combat zone in the war on terror, which is entirely the entire planet. There's no place that's not considered part of it. That came from the mouth directly of the original 2012 NDAA. I got to tell you, folks, where we are headed with this and what this is for. This explains to you what they're doing with all the data they're collecting. You've heard me say it many times before, that they are building dossiers on you to develop and create enemy lists, to identify who is for and who is against them, to find out who is a rabble-rouser, to find out who is a problem, to silence voices of dissent, to silence voices of opposition. And this is the means by which that will be accomplished. This is the vehicle that will get them from point A to point B. Now, I know there are people who are going to say, Evans, you're reading way too much into that. I'm sorry, you're absolutely, unequivocally wrong. This was written by lawyers, for lawyers, so that they would have the broadest opportunity to find as many massive loopholes to incorporate and utilize this in any way, shape, and form that they can, and that they choose to, now and in the future. The truth of the matter is, if I'm wrong, all you've got to do is look at how they define the Commerce Clause. All you've got to do is look at how they've defined the constitutional statement of the Welfare Clause. I'm not wrong. And I get it. You may disagree with me. You may say, this guy is wearing a tinfoil hat an inch and a half thick. Okay. But I am going to tell you this. At some point in the fairly near future, we're going to find out who's right. And I'll bet you money it ain't you. The truth is, the National Defense Authorization Act prohibits the most heinous, the most unconstitutional, the most authoritarian and dictatorial actions on American citizens. No one has given a plausible or reasonable explanation for how Americans are not involved in and incorporated into this. And I'm going to tell you something. This turns America into a fascist dictatorship. The pieces are coming together, slowly but surely, building, piling, mounding, molding, shaping. You're only going to believe it when they come for you. But mark my words, one day they'll come for you. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. This is the end of our program for the day and the end of the program the weekend. I would like very much for you to share this segment with anyone and everyone. I don't care if you sit down with 5 buddies and over a beer and listen to this and then have a discussion about it amongst yourselves. Get this information out. Contact me with your opinion and your ideas on it at Mike at americasvoicenow.org. We'll see you tomorrow.